gone since I played there, in the land where the red man used to roam. Many times I wondered why I never stayed there, when I went so far away to make my home. I'm just an okie at heart, though fortune may shower down on me. I'm just an okie at heart, no matter in what state I may be.
For as long as I've known my wife Ashley, she's mentioned numerous times her desire to take Allie, Avery, and me back to the small Oklahoma town of Tahlequah where she was born. It's not hard to understand why she would want to make such a trip. At 8, Ashley left Tahlequah with her mother and sister, thus marking the beginning of a childhood spent constantly moving from place to place. I once asked my wife how many addresses she had as a kid, and for the life of her she couldn't come up with an exact number. So, for someone who grew up under such transient conditions, even by gypsy standards, the rarity of those consecutive years lived in Tahlequah represented the closest thing Ashley could point to as a hometown, a relatively tiny blip on the map, but one that resided in a prominent place among her memories. When the opportunity to revisit some of those memories presented itself this past Thanksgiving, the decision to go was a given, especially since Ashley would also have the chance to meet her half-sister Brooke for the first time. Well, I say first time, but that really should be qualified with first time as adults. They had briefly crossed paths once before at their father's funeral, but with Ashley being 16 and Brooke a small toddler, it was hardly memorable, unlike their respective mothers who spent the entire service glaring at one another. As I understand it, though, the Real Housewives of Tahlequah have since made their peace and now, despite their spouse's post-mortem status, enjoy a friendly relationship much like the polygamist wives on Big Love. Ashley's father, whom everyone called Sparky, was a talented rock musician of some note, with an ear for chord arrangement and an eye for the ladies. Because he often toured, Ashley inherited a handful of half-sisters throughout various parts of the country: Louisiana, Oklahoma, Minnesota. Those are just the ones she knows about anyway. It's not unusual for my wife to come home and tell me that she received yet another friend request via Facebook from a tall, thin blonde between the ages of 35 and 20 claiming to be the seed of Sparky Fisher. Every time this happens, I bring up the idea of creating a Children of Sparky Fisher Facebook group since, according to the wonders of social networking, we now know that her father's virility went viral, literally. I consider it something of an irony that all of Sparky's known offspring are female, little girls who grew up without a father, or an absentee one at best. Of course, there may be sons out there, but none have come forward, which may be just as well, since the idea of a bunch of little Sparkies running around armed with Fender guitars and fueled by the six drive of horny coked-out rabbits carries its own element of equal sadness. Why man should be so endowed with the ability to influence the choices of the X chromosome from the point of their conception to well past his own death is beyond me. But in the category of TMI, endowment also extended to other areas related to Sparky's biological composition. This according to Ashley, who relayed that, how should I phrase this, he was well above the national average, a detail learned from her vodka-soaked mother in a moment of late-night loneliness. This is one of the reasons why I shut my mother-in-law off after 2 drinks at family gatherings. After a quiet drive, the duration of which Ashley spent rechecking her makeup and hair, we arrived at the Chili's restaurant where Brooke would be meeting us for lunch. I forget sometimes how much I take Chili's for granted, but to the residents, both past and present, of a certain city in northeast Oklahoma, baby back ribs and barbecue sauce was the biggest thing to hit town since the Trail of Tears in 1838. Or that's how it appeared, based on the observation that it served as a lead-off topic of conversation for 2 siblings who had been estranged from one another for most of their lives. Eventually, though, Ashley and Brooke moved on, and over the next hour they caught up on the whereabouts of family members and filled each other in on the details of their own lives. Brooke was a pretty girl, blonde and thin, per the Sparky Fisher spermus operandi, a detail not lost on Ashley. "I think Brooke's anorexic," she said later in a faintly jealous tone. But being familiar with my wife's thought process, I knew that she meant this as a compliment. Right as she was explaining her plans for dental hygienist school, Brooke let out a deep yawn. "I'm so sorry, y'all," she said, lowering her hand from in front of her mouth. "I got up at 5 this morning to go hunting." Clearly, Brooke would be making one lucky fellow a good wife someday, and the Trans Am she drove off in after everyone exchanged goodbyes doubled those odds. With only a day to spend in Tahlequah, Ashley had coordinated a full agenda for us, with the next stop being a visit to her Aunt Betty Lou and Uncle Hank. "Hey, girls," Ashley said as we got out of the van and walked around the fenced-in backyard of her aunt and uncle's double-wide trailer. "That's the pool Mommy used to swim in when I was your age." Like me, the girls were experiencing a tangible part of Ashley's childhood for the first time, and they were taking it all in with the curiosity of tourists examining lost ancient ruins. Their incessant line of questioning stopped, though, as a rare bout of bashfulness silenced the two chatterboxes once Betty Lou welcomed us from behind the screen door. As we stepped inside, Betty Lou shifted some magazines around and invited us to sit down on the overstuffed sectional dominating the room. As Ashley introduced the girls and me, I could hear a hint of unsureness in her voice, which I could empathize with, given that I wasn't exactly sure what to expect of the situation myself. When it comes to our first impressions of people, there's that saying about not judging a book by its cover, and I wholeheartedly agree with that maxim, especially when you can use their living room decor instead. Glancing around, I noticed that Betty Lou had a keen eye for using an army of knickknacks, decades of family portraits, and a library of Harlequin romance novels to bring out the best in wood paneling. I immediately felt at home. Betty Lou and my grandmother, it would seem, shared a common flair for interior design, the familiarity of which put me at complete ease. This feeling was further reinforced upon meeting Ashley's Uncle Hank a few minutes later. Seeing as how I'm getting along in years, I rather enjoyed reminiscing with a kindred soul about the good old days when life was less complicated. Ashley and her aunt were doing the same, except that the focus of their conversation centered on a past captured between the laminated pages of several photo albums crammed with yellowing pictures, newspaper clippings, and show programs chronicling the exploits of one Sparky Fisher. Of the few details I knew prior to meeting Betty Lou, the one mentioned most consistently was that of her position as the self-elected president of the Sparky Fisher Fan Club Fraternity. This fact I soon confirmed for myself when, after exhausting the albums, she led Ashley and I to a sizable room dedicated entirely to the memory of her deceased half-brother. Betty beamed as she pointed out featured artifacts displayed in the wall-to-wall shrine she had built from such relics as handwritten drafts of original lyrics, a variety of venue posters, and other band memorabilia. Of all the exhibits, though, my personal favorite was a shadow box containing Sparky's guitar strap and guitar pick, along with his driver's license and hood ornament from a '75 Cadillac that he walked away from after downing God only knows how much alcohol and then wrecking on Dead Man's Curve. Upon seeing this, it was a foregone conclusion that given the necessary resources, Betty would have had Sparky's body cryogenically preserved and put on display as the centerpiece to her extensive collection, currently located within eyeshot of the spot where she cooked grits every morning. The official tour ended the same way they always do at big attractions, with a staff member taking your photo and then charging you $30 to cherish the moment. Thankfully, Betty waived the money, feeling no need to bring it up as she snapped the photo of Ashley and me. But once the camera flashed, the adoring smile that had lit her face seconds earlier now dimmed at the reminder that more than just the tour was over. From then until the time we left, the conversation remained upbeat, but it was laced with an underlying hint of disappointment, like that of moviegoers let down by the unfulfilling ending to a highly anticipated sequel. As I returned to my place on the couch, Hank leaned in toward me. "He's really good, you know. Played with a nitty-gritty dirt band, Randy Crouch, Clapton." Hank's voice trailed off, and looking over at the bulging photo album stacked on the coffee table, he sunk back into the cushions. The wistfulness in his expression was unmistakable. "Yep, he really could have been big."
Sparky Fisher! Check it, Sparky. After all is said and done, there is a saying, every man must find his place beneath the sun. I'd like to hear old Blue and browse her baying when they put that Wally raccoon on the run. You see, I'm still an Okie at heart, as I ramble around from place to place. Just a hang-tough Okie at heart, because one to me is no disgrace. Tulsa and Muskogee, dear old Tahlequah, that's where my daddy first met my darling Mo. Oklahoma's still in my heart, and right there forever she'll be. Well, the things they say about her, I couldn't live without her, 'cause I'm still just an Okie at heart. Just spinning coffee, Okie at heart. A cotton picking Okie